everybody. Welcome back to Aids to Scouting. This is our second season, episode 13.
Yep.
Or is it 14?
Maybe it's 14 now.
Maybe it's
Took
14.
some minutes to go.
Yeah, once I got past 10 fingers, it's hard to count,
I know. I don't want to take my shoes off in front of everybody.
Well, tonight we're very fortunate in that we have, I won't call him a Cajun, not yet, but we have Ben Pierce, who is from the Louisiana Swamp Base. So, Scouting America has these different bases. We've got a base up on the Canadian border. We've got Philmont. We've got the Sea Base, and so we're going to talk today about the Swamp Base, and Ben's going to be our swamp guide.
Sounds good.
All right, Ben, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm actually not a Cajun at all. So I was born and raised in the Rocky Mountains, but I have lived in Louisiana the vast majority of my life. But my last name's Pierce, and you don't find a lot of Cajuns with the last name Pierce.
No, monsieur, c'est très bien, très bien. Continuez, please.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I grew up here in Lafayette, Louisiana. Went through all my schooling. I'm an LSU graduate. Go Tigers! And I got involved with scouting back in the professional side of scouting back in 2010. So I've been here with the Evangeline Area Council in the heart of Cajun country for 16 years.
All right. Well, tell me, were you a scout when you were young?
I was a scout, but I would be what you call a one and done scout. So my rank in scouting is Tiger Cub, sadly.
Sadly. Well, maybe it looks like you grew up all right. And
I grew up all right. Yeah.
And now you found your way into the right hands.
Absolutely. And so we have a great volunteer who says when he's talking to people for the first time and asking who's in the room that are a scout, or we're involved with scouting, and people will raise their hand and they'll go, I only went through wolf or bear and things like that. And they kind of feel, disappointed in their answer. He goes, no, you were a scout. You are a scout. You got involved with the program. Maybe you didn't get all the way to Eagle. Maybe you haven't come back to be a volunteer, but you understood the program for a period of time and the values of it. And now we get a chance to reintroduce you to it. So I was reintroduced to the program 16 years, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
What led you into being a scouter?
I'll try to do the long story as short as I possibly can.
There we go.
Bear with me on some timing here, but it all comes down to I got a degree in landscape architecture and land planning. And so I was working for a firm here in Louisiana, and we were going through some old master plans, dusting them off and seeing what we had available that we could maybe reinvigorate, maybe talk with some clients. And so I saw one on the Atchafalaya Basin here in Louisiana, the country's largest swamp. It's about 1.4 million acres. And said, hey, let me give a call to the Atchafalaya and see who picks up the phone. Well, I called a state office. They picked up the phone on the Wednesday afternoon before Thanksgiving back in 2009. Talked to me for an extended period of time, but went in one ear and out the other, because as far as I knew, scouting was not going to be a very valuable client. What they said to me at the time was that they had just had a meeting with a bunch of scouters from the Lafayette area, and they were discussing a new project that they were going to have. Well, from a design standpoint, that didn't really make a whole lot of sense, or didn't have a whole lot of alignment. And so I hung up the phone, thanked the lady for the call, and didn't really think anything about it. You fast forward only 48 hours later, the day after Thanksgiving, I'm on a golf course here in Lafayette, and the course marshal asks if we can have 2 additional people join our threesome. One of those people, who did not have their tee time and just showed up to the course, was a scouter here in Lafayette. By the third hole, I had a chance to introduce myself to him, and he happened to be the scout executive actually here in Lafayette. A scout executive without a tee time, very unprepared of him, actually. So that's something that I think is very funny. And I asked him about this project that I just heard about just 2 days prior, which he didn't know that much about because he was up at winter camp during that meeting. So I knew more actually about what they had just met about than he did. And so we got to talking, enjoying each other's company, learning about our history. My grandfather was a big scouter up in Michigan. and sang all his old scout songs from the 40s and stuff with him. And so they got along, they became fast friends. And by the end of that round of golf, I was being considered, though I didn't know it, for a position with the organization. 2 weeks later, I got a call from that scout executive saying, we'd like you to plan the centennial celebration for our local council. And so I joined in January of 2020. I'm sorry, in 2010. And 4 weeks later, I had to plan a celebration to celebrate 100 years of scouting, which I was only 1 year a part of. So that was a big task. And from that point forward, we've kind of gotten ourselves more involved in the Atchafalaya as an environment that we think scouts can actively participate in, learn from, recreate in, and we've really grown this thing into an amazing experience for scouters from all the corners of the country.
Well, I've got some questions. I'm sort of hoping Elliott can bring up a map. Now, obviously, people who are listening just on, we go on Spotify tomorrow and all that. So, in other words, they'll just be hearing us. They won't be seeing any of this. But oddly enough, I live in Pike County, Georgia, and a lady named Gwen Rowland lives there, and and Gwen wrote I can't ever pronounce it. Appalachia.
It's a Atchafalaya. So you want to say it like you're about to sneeze. So it's Atchafalaya. If you do it that way, there you go. Yeah.
Well, Gwen lives there now, and for those who are listening out there, Gwen wrote a book that was a bestseller, but it was called Atchafalaya. There we
Great
go.
job. Yep.
And she talks a lot about the whole background and the way of life there. So if we talk about how many square miles, not what the scouts own or control, but
right,
what's the size of this basin area that is not developed?
Yeah, so I don't know about it in square miles. We usually use acres to describe it here. It's 1.4 million acres. Which is a much bigger number than how many it would be in square miles. But so 1.4 million acres. And so that's roughly equivalent to the size of the Everglades in Florida, as well as the Okefenokee in southern Georgia. So all three of those are roughly around the same size, and give or take, kind of how you define the edge of a swamp is tough. So we consider ourselves kind of one of three equal sized environments.
Yeah, but that's terrific. Now the scouts have, it's the base. It's called a base. Now, how much do the scouts have that's within that area?
Far less. Actually, we own about 63 acres, which but it gives us water frontage, and that's the main thing for us.
That's the key to it. Yeah. Now, when you talk about water frontage, I imagine of that, how much million acres?
1.4. Yeah.
1.4 million acres. I assume about 600,000 of those acres are covered with water.
Yes, it's water, cypress trees, willow and tupelo trees as well. You also have some uplands as well that have the oaks and the maples and things like that on it. But the thing about the 1.4 million acres, which is the interesting part, especially down here, is that only half to a little bit less than half of it is actually public lands. And so it's private individuals, it's corporations, and then you have state-owned and federally owned properties as well. So what you own is kind of different. Most of the waterways, though, are wide open to the public. If they're considered navigable, they're open for the public to be able to explore.
Yep. Well, speaking of exploring, tell us a little about, tell us all, because this is your big chance to sell the base. To the whole world.
This is it. The only time, huh?
It's not the only time. I bet you've got a website.
We've got almost 3 people watching right now.
They're probably my coworkers too. Yeah. So yeah. No, we started this, like I said, back in 2010 is when I joined the organization, and it really started as a way to celebrate 100 years of scouting. And so we started by getting our local scouts more engaged, because at the time we really only had one troop that actively participated in this environment. So we've got at that time just under 5,000 or so scouts and in our council, and just one troop is actually out there participating in the Atchafalaya. And that just wasn't good enough for our scout leadership. We said, we got this amazing wilderness right on our eastern boundary. We got to get people more engaged. And so we had at that time a big celebration for the 100 years. It was to go out there and do some service projects. We wanted to make sure we had our good turn to celebrate the 100 years. So instead of doing a parade or trying to set a record or climb buildings or propel off buildings like we heard, all these things, our project to celebrate 100 years was all about service. And so that is what this has been from the very beginning. The day one, it's about service to this area. So we went out and we planted a cypress tree for every single scout in the council. So we went out there with dibbles, which are kind of very rough, rudimentary type of shovel, and planted 4,457 cypress trees out in the Atchafalaya. We anticipated, our leadership at the time, that we would be planting those until the late hours of the evening, maybe midnight or later, trying to plant that many trees. We were pleasantly surprised with the power of scouting that we planted all those trees in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Good grief.
2 hours.
That's great.
That's incredible.
To the point, and I've told this to people who participated, and they get a chuckle out of it now, but we planted them so quickly. We had a morning session and an afternoon session. Planted them so quickly that we had to go back out and remove trees from the ground, so we'd have trees for the other scouts to plant in the afternoon. Crazy.
So that sounds almost Soviet, you know?
Yeah. Well, for somebody who hadn't been involved with scouting in 25 years, to sit there and have your first big event really show that happening was outstanding. And again, my background is not in scouting. You could easily have, and I'm sure you've had many times, people here on this podcast be Eagle Scouts, and have been a long history with the scouting organization. My history, as I said, is very, very brief. It's now much longer, but at the time it was very, very brief. And so my involvement with the organization was much more personal than it was to give back to an organization that had given so much to me as a youth. I was wanting to give back, and personally, to my state and to the environment in which I was raised. And so I kind of have always thought about this from a different set of eyes than other people may have who are involved with some of these other bases across the country. I'm not a lifetime scouter. I wasn't. Luckily, though, on our team, I've got some great scouters. So they've always been able to speak the good scout talk. I've always been kind of really focused on the mission of this environment and how it pertains to Louisiana and the rest of the country, and then using the amazing vehicle that is Scouting America to be able to show that to youth and then change perceptions of this place. So
I'd like for you to tell us, and I hate to push you and interrupt you, but
you're good.
For you to tell us what is going on at the base now. Do y'all have a series of Adirondacks or screened buildings, and how many troops do you handle during the summertime? In other words, people around the United States or around the world may want to come to the base and then get on boats and go out in those vast areas down there, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
So, but what do you actually have as physical plant there?
Yep. So I'll again, kind of one of these things that we've always kind of talked about. You've seen the movie Field of Dreams back from, I guess, the late 80s, early 90s with Kevin Costner, right?
Yes.
The big line in that movie was, if you build it, they will come.
Yes.
Well, when you don't have any money at the beginning, and you don't have any donor support because they don't really know what your vision is, it's very hard to build something and then have people show up. So we did what we call the reverse Field of Dreams. We're going to go out there and start playing the game. In our case, getting scouts out there exploring and adventuring through the wilderness, the Atchafalaya Swamp. And then when the time is right, we're going to start talking about how do we actually have a base facility? How do we have a headquarters for these activities? So we wanted to make sure that we were good stewards of people's time and, of course, their own resources. And so we said, we're not just going to start building a bunch of stuff that we don't know if this can even be successful. You got to think real quick when it comes to a marketing standpoint. Selling a swamp to people is not the easiest task in the world. There are so many negative. Thank you, Elliot, for laughing. I appreciate that, because that's exactly the response you get from a lot of people. When people think about swamps, they think about it in a negative way.
Boy, I don't. A person that goes into a swamp, I mean, that makes all the difference. I know that, for example, the Okefenokee is amazing, and then having read Gwen's book, it's like I almost feel like I've been there, and I have this vision of it, and so that's all it takes is a good taste of it.
So the interesting thing there is that you actually have some background with it because of the book and that experience. But if I'm sitting there and you're in Georgia, and so you're part of the South, and so you know where this environment is located. But if I'm trying to sell this to someone, or to encourage them, not sell, but encourage them to come down and participate, and they're from Iowa, for instance, you don't really find a whole lot of swamps up in Iowa. And so what you rely on as the information to learn about this place is movies, TV shows, and we had a lot of TV shows about 15 years ago, all the reality shows here in Louisiana. Think about Swamp People and Duck Dynasty, and you name it, right?
Yeah.
And they're trying to dramatize a little bit of what's going on. But to try to sell it to somebody in Iowa is far different than trying to sell it to somebody who might be in Southern Florida, right? But the thing is, it's tough no matter what, because though the Iowans have not seen a swamp firsthand and are influenced by outside opinions, the people in Florida feel like they've seen it already. So they're just as hard to be able to get out there and get them to explore it, right? So for us, it's a tough sell. And when we look at ourselves compared to some of the amazing facilities and bases that scouting has to offer, and you go through the big four, when you talk about sea base, it's kind of it's a given, right? I mean, who's going to tell you that the turquoise waters of the Florida Keys are gross in any kind of way or dangerous, right? I mean, it's unfair how they have that opportunity, right? And then you talk about the Southern Rockies with Philmont. Come on, right? People from all over the world travel to the Rockies and New Mexico in general. The boundary waters where Northern Tier is located. Again, you're talking about, a national treasure up there. And then, of course, West Virginia and the New River Gorge. I mean, they put a national park right in their backyard. So, I mean, you're in a good spot. Swamps are completely different. Hey, come out to a swamp. When we watch those shows that were on the TV shows on Discovery and History and all these places, they would always describe the swamps in a negative way. They'd have their people going out there and trying to survive in these places, but they'd always go, this place is infested. It's dangerous. And then they'd jump in and throw in a bunch of different diseases that you could potentially contract through mosquitoes. Well, you can't get some of these diseases, but they'll still tell them anyway because they want people to be watching the show time after time. And if it looks challenging, that gets eyeballs on the TV. So we use that as our way. Hey, we want to make sure that our program is going to be challenging. That we're going to talk about alligators. We're going to talk about mosquitoes. We're going to talk about snakes. We're going to talk about all the things that people assume a swamp has. And then we're going to be in the role of busting those myths. And the idea, like you said, is you got to get out there and see it firsthand. You want that. So we want to ramp up our challenge big time. If we have a big challenge and we got good scouts out there that want challenges, they're going to want to come out here and do our program and participate because they want to see if this is truly what we say it is. All that kind of the mystery and the myths that are associated with it, we want them to come here with that mindset so that way we can break it. And that's what we do. That's our big mission with what our program does. And I'll get to what we do in the facilities. I know we're off a little bit on that tangent, but when we have our scouts arrive to Swamp Base, and it's one of the things that means the most to me, and I get goosebumps almost every time I get a chance to experience this.
I'm getting goosebumps right now because I used to own a small swamp, and I'd take my children when they were young, and we'd go swamp walking. And which meant we'd get wet,
Right. Yeah. We call it we call it stomping in our area. But so you have these scouts from all corners of the country. They'll come down. Let's say they're from Idaho, and they arrive at our program, and we do an orientation. And the very first thing we ask them is to describe a swamp with one single word. Now, this is boiling down a 1.4 million acre wilderness to a single word, which can be unfair because it's so diverse. But we want to hear right off the bat, what is their opinion of a swamp? And so we go through every scout, every single leader, one by one, and say, what is the first word that comes to mind when you hear the word swamp? And as you can imagine, you're going to hear words that if you were talking about your mama, you wouldn't be very happy with, right? So gross and nasty and smelly, dangerous, all these things that are pretty offensive feeling, whenever they're talking about, a place that you love so dearly, right? So you're hearing all these things. You hear mosquitoes and you're hearing snakes and you're hearing all this stuff. And so that's okay because they don't know what they don't know. And our goal at that point is to tell them, we are going to challenge you over the next 5 days. You're going to get out there, you experience this place firsthand. And then when it's all said and done, we're going to ask you again to describe a swamp with one word. And our goal as a program is to sit there and turn that around 180 degrees. And so you have that scout or the scouter from Iowa who came down and said, this place is smelly or gross. And you get them to be out there on the water, paddling through the cypress trees and through our program. And when they describe it with one word at the end, your goal is to have them have that positive mindset of it. And so you're hearing words that are very simple and things that you see with your eyes, like it's beautiful and it's majestic and sunset or sunrise and whatever it might be, green. But then you hear things that are much more emotional connections, which to us is what it's all about. So you hear peaceful, right? That's a great one. You hear growth and you're going, okay, well, that could be about the plants and everything. And they're like, no, it's just how I change as a person from the beginning to the end. So from the trailhead to the trail end, how did I change as a person? Not only because of what they had to endure during the trek, but how their mind changes to this place. And then you hear the one that really just, this is the one I get the goosebumps on and the hair on the back of my neck starts to stand up, is when you hear people who are not from the state or not even from this immediate area use the word home to describe this environment. And this is their first time in Louisiana, their first time in a swamp. And they're saying, this place is home to me. And that's the one that when they leave, we're the most proud of, because it's not about what they saw, but it's how it made them feel. It's how they changed. And when you sit there and have a departure ceremony with scouts and scouters in a circle talking about their experience, and that's the kind of level of emotion you're pulling out of them, you know you're making a difference, right? You're making a difference in their scouting career. You're making a difference for our state in this environment, but you're making a huge difference in how they perceive themselves, other people, and other environments for the rest of their lives. And so for us, this has always been, like I said, I'm not a scouter, but I'm able to have an opportunity to use scouting as a vehicle to make drastic and important change for a place that is very valuable to the rest of the country.
You know, I'm thinking right now of that word that's popular these days called forest bathing. And so there they are, forest bathing for that whole 5 days. And they're, and I think of my experience with swamps and the majestic trees and the birds going through, and out there you've got it's just marvelous. And all the life that a swamp embraces and nourishes is amazing.
I want to take this for a second and kind of relate it to my scouting lifestyle, I guess what you'd say. That feeling that you get, that feeling of that place when you're at home, you know, whether it's the swamp or the Rockies or the Okefenokee swamp or the North Georgia mountains or something like that, or wherever it may be, that feeling that you get where it suddenly feels like home when you've gone through some high adventure challenge like that in the scouts or just as an adventure. It's you got to go through those tough things, the hard paddles, or the hard climbs, or the hard hikes. And when you get to whatever destination, or maybe you don't even make it to the destination, but you've gone through the challenge anyways, that feeling of home that you get with your group of scouts or friends or family or whatever you have, it's a really fun and interesting thing to be able to gather. But I can only imagine how beautiful and steamy and peaceful that it must feel out in the swamp. I've never been to an actual swamp. I've been to some weird places and down near South Georgia, but they weren't technically swamps. I don't.
Well, and Elliot, one of the things that we had a scout several years back, we have a departure ceremony at the end of the experience, and this scout, I didn't know it at the time. No one had told me, but they were born completely blind, and they participated in the program, and so that really changed my whole mindset and how I think about what we do, because I had a scout who goes out there and doesn't see a single thing their entire time. And so beauty is not going to be a word that's going to come to mind for that scout, and neither is majestic and all these other things. And frankly, you know, when they have those long open water paddles, they have no idea how far it is to that other tree line. They don't know if they're, 100 yards away or a mile or more away. And they just sit out there and they give it their all. And they support their paddle mate in the canoe, and they're going out there, and then they're asking for support, and they're providing it. And so it was just a different way of how you think about stuff. And in fact, like when we have these scouts talk about cypress trees and how beautiful they are, and the way that the light goes through the moss, the Spanish moss that's hanging off those branches, that's a thing that this scout never saw. But so what was that cypress tree then to that scout? Well, it was a point of relief and refuge from the summer sun. And so what he felt was different than what the other scouts felt. Like they got a chance to see and feel. All he's doing is having a chance to feel. And so that shade and how it cooled him off, maybe 10, 15 degrees cooler in that shade, that was the impact that this place had on him. Yeah. It was an amazing thing to find that out at the end of this program, that we had a scout that didn't have the same abilities as the scouts around him, but gave it his all the entire time and was a huge fan of what we were doing out here, because he got the deeper message much faster than maybe some of those other scouts even did.
And it speaks truly, even still, without the visual beauty of it all, going through that challenge with your scout mates, you can still find that. And those the closing ceremony, what are you, a departure ceremony?
We call it a departure ceremony. Yeah.
Yes, those the closing ceremonies after any high adventure or any good deep training like Wood Badge or like NYLT or Nail, those right at the very end, those last campfires, those are some of the best experiences of the experience.
Right.
Those emotions that you're talking about, like the home feeling, the wow, I see the bigger picture, I really get it, and you're dog tired most of the time and probably dirty and sweaty, but still it's such a good feeling. You just can't get it without the challenge of it. You just can't get it without that teamwork, without that beauty, visual or not.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, and our departure ceremony is a little bit different too, because not only do we have that opportunity for that sharing of the experience, but they also have a belly full of po' boy, South Louisiana po' boys at the same time. So that's just a little added extra benefit too. So you got some fried shrimp po' boys in your belly at the same time. It's a pretty good departure ceremony.
Tell me something, Ben. Are y'all's experiences overnights where y'all go out in loaded canoes and then you go 5 miles out to a camping place and camp there, and then go another 5 miles the next day, or do y'all generally do day trips from the base?
So our program is 61.6 miles. They arrive in Lafayette, and we do all of our orientations, our health checks, gear shakedowns here in town, and then we shuttle them up to a trailhead, and they spend the next 5 days and 4 nights paddling those 61.6 miles. Our program is a trek camp. And so they have a starting point, the trailhead, and an ending point, the trail end. And we hope everybody makes it from point A to point Z at the end. And so we have set campsites that they paddle to during their trek. So they're out there on the water for 5 days. The first day that they paddle is 19.4 miles. They paddle through a really nice, diverse experience on that day. But 19.4 miles of paddling, we believe, because I haven't heard anybody tell us differently, is the longest paddling day, at least in still water, in scouting. And so it is what we consider a bear of a day. They arrive at the end of that day to a set of floating campsites. They're basically pavilions that float on the water, because you run out of land as you go through the swamp in some places. And so we call those the turtles. They are a primitive campsite. So there's no running water, no electricity. We bring water out daily. And then they cook out there using propane to make a Louisiana red beans and rice for their first night. And so their first night for these scouts in the swamp, maybe they're from Arizona and they don't have a whole lot of water around them, is sleeping on the water. And so it's an amazing experience. They're dog tired at that point, obviously, but those who stay up and have their headlamps, they can look back at the water around them, enjoy the sunset, and then hopefully see some of those red eyes reflecting back to them of the gators that are out in the water. That second day is a little bit less of paddling. They go about 10.4 miles. We have a swamp tour that they go on that day. So we have a for-profit company that's actually a partner company of ours here in Louisiana, and they get on a swamp tour boat, the whole crew, and they go out there and they get a chance to get up close to some of the larger alligators that we have in the swamp. And so we're talking 10, 12, 13 feet. What you got?
I have a question. How do you keep the gator and Chip?
Oh my gosh.
Out of what?
Give me 1 second.
Okay. I'm so excited. I've been looking forward to asking you about this.
So for one, you have to have the ability to be able to hold one of these guys right here. And so
he brought a gator out. That's
incredible. So we got a little baby gator right here. We actually have 5 of them. If you hear the running water in the background, that's a large aquarium that we have here in my office. where they stay. We've got a great partnership with Wildlife and Fisheries here in Louisiana. So we use these guys not only for our scouting program, but also for outreach here with the community. So we're going into schools, we've got field trips. And so, like I said, scouting is this amazing vehicle and a great opportunity, but everyone should have an opportunity to experience this wilderness and learn more about it. And so the best way to be able to, oh, he's chirping for you. Can y'all hear that?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Saying hello. But the best way to learn about a creature like this is to see them firsthand, to be able to hold them like this, and then be able to go, you know what, this is an amazing creature. It's got a value to it. It's not something to be scared about, but it's something to learn about and respect. And so that's one of our little babies. This one is probably a year, if not less than that old.
Well, I just
compared to my head, it's a little tiny.
I want people who are just only hearing this over the radio that we're talking about a real live alligator that he's got in his hand.
Yeah, Ben just pulled an alligator out of his hat, basically.
Not a stuffed. It's not a stuffed one. It's a real one.
Yeah.
And how long is the biggest possible alligator? I hear they can live a tremendously long time. Science has said maybe 60 or 100 years or something.
Probably even older than that. So they grow quickly for their first 6 years or so, about a foot a year. And then they grow very slowly from there, just a couple inches, and it just gets even smaller and smaller as they age. Roughly a 12-foot alligator is going to be about 40 or so years old.
Wow.
And so they have incredibly small brains. So they as people always say, alligators are dumb. They got small brains, but instinctually they are incredibly smart. So they want to stay away from anything that's a threat, and especially as they get older. These little guys like this are a little bit more curious. But if you can see right here, see these stripes on them? That's the tail. Almost looks like a bumblebee stripes. So you have the kind of the yellows and blacks. That's camouflage. So this guy right now, if he was out in the wild, he would be considered prey. So he's not a predator by any means. He's prey for large wading birds like egrets and blue herons. They're looking at this as a potential meal. Even a large catfish could probably take one of these guys out. Even when they're smaller, maybe even a bullfrog too. So it takes a little while for them to get big, but they grow fairly quickly. You could have alligators. I think the record here in Louisiana, maybe it might be the all-time American alligator record, I believe is like 19 feet, 2 inches.
Wow.
But it was over 100 years ago when they captured that. Usually in the swamp, the largest we'll see, because we do have an active hunting season in the fall, is going to be 13 or so feet. Anything beyond that, usually the hunters find a way to be able to harvest those gators.
Yeah. Well, that's, you mentioned herons. And so that's one of the things I think that's very nice about swamps is how they provide such habitat for birds that we don't see. I mean, I see blue herons in our area.
Right.
They're in Europe and everything. Blue herons are, but you probably have eagles there too. And other kinds of birds similar to eagle, fish hawks and things like that.
Yeah. So we have the osprey.
Osprey. That's right.
Yep. I knew that's what you're going with. My favorite is the spoonbill, the rosette spoonbill. That's the pink bird. A lot of times the scouts will jokingly call that the Cajun flamingos because they're pink. They're a beautiful bird. So we have a lot of the larger wading birds. We have all the different varieties of the ibis. We have cormorants and hingas and things like that. But the Atchafalaya and its size and its location along the Gulf Coast, it's actually a major flyway, part of the Mississippi River flyway. And it's a landing point for songbirds coming across the Gulf from Mexico, southern Mexico, Central America, and South America. So we have a lot of bird activity in this area. And because we have so much water coming down into the swamp, we're connected to the Mississippi River and 40% of the country. So we have great fisheries, and that supports all those birds. And of course, we have amazing reptiles and amphibians too. So we have a really great diversity of wildlife that the scouts see on the trail. And just kind of following up on kind of the talk about the experience, that second day, like I mentioned, was about 10 and a half miles or so. They go on a swamp tour. They get a chance to see the alligators. They don't earn that gator and chip with those 13 footers though. We don't do that. And then they finish up that evening on a primitive location called Rougarou Island. And a Rougarou is a Cajun werewolf. It's a folklore story.
Yep.
We get a chance to share that. They sleep in jungle hammocks that evening. So they go from sleeping in cots on a floating campsite night one. They're in jungle hammocks on night two. Of course, you have all the bug netting just to make sure everybody's okay with it. So they're floating in the air in the middle of a kind of an old hardwood forest, a lot of live oaks and things in that area. Next day, they wake up and they paddle about 14 miles, and they get to a place that we call Camp Atchafalaya. At that location, they actually spend a day off from paddling. So they have 2 nights at that location, 1 day off from paddling, and that allows us to do other programs. And so we have our baby alligators down there, and we get a chance to have everyone hold them and learn more about the gators. We talk a little bit about the watershed of the Mississippi River and its connectivity to Louisiana. And then we have activities and things like that on site. So everybody stays entertained. They get a chance to relax and rest those muscles if they need to, but they also get a chance to really learn more in depth about Louisiana and our connection to the rest of the country. But yes, this thing is a cool little idea. I had a scouter here in my office about a month and a half or so ago, and his son was looking at, his Cub Scout was looking at our alligators, and he said, "Don't put your hand in there. You don't have a gator and chip." And it was just a side comment and joke. And I turned it into a patch. So it's pretty cool little parody patch. Yeah.
That's awesome.
For those of you who don't know what he's talking about exactly, in scouting, they have what's called a toting chip. And so scouting tries to make sure that all scouts and even Cub Scouts know how to handle a knife and an axe and a hatchet so they don't hurt themselves. And injuries can occur, but that's so a gator toting chip is kind of that same thing, which is you got to have the chip to handle the gator.
Yeah. Look, there's a proper way to handle them. They are a living creature, and we want to be respectful to them. And so we go through a whole kind of lesson and lecture about alligators and their importance. They were an endangered species back in the 1970s. I mean, so these things were getting close to the brink of extinction. And now we actually have to have an active hunting season just to keep the numbers back. So from a conservation story, it's an amazing thing with the alligators. So we want to make sure that they practice, like I said, a good, safe handling of that alligator and respect it. Of course, we don't have them without an actual kind of tape or so on the mouth when we're passing them around with scouts or schools, because we want to make sure that nobody makes any mistakes. They are, like, again, it's not Disney. They are a living creature, but this is just a little joke we had here in our office, and our scouters and scouts absolutely love this thing. So.
I think it's great. It reminds me of another novelty pat. Just to take it away from the swamp for a second, we had the duct tape merit badge. In my troop, we actually had the little patches with duct tape rolls, but we kind of treated it like it was a legitimate merit badge. We went through the history of duct tape. We went through all the different types of duct tape. You have to make 2 or 3 things with duct tape. You have to repair something with duct tape and all that stuff. And you can turn it in. If you do it, you get your actual little merit badge. Of course, it wasn't real, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that's the point. That's a game with a purpose.
Well,
yeah.
Well, down here in the South, I guess you both know, or these foreigners that might be listening to us need to know what in the South we say, if it moves but it ain't supposed to move, you use duct tape. And if it don't move but it's supposed to move, you use WD-40.
If it might bite you, you can put duct tape around its mouth just to be careful. Right?
Yeah. Hey, Ben, tell us, you haven't mentioned swimming. Do y'all have swimming there?
Yeah,
we don't have an active swimming program. So swimming is not something that we necessarily promote as part of our program, though we don't, we're unable to stop scouts from getting in the water. It is perfectly safe for them to swim if they were to so choose so, but it's not something that we sit there and say, hey, look, we're not an aquatics program in that kind of sense.
Yeah, I just wondered about alligators in the water, Is that...
they're actually perfectly safe if they do get in the water. The alligators are really shy and docile creatures. And so this goes back full circle to kind of how we would sell our program and the challenge and the mystery of it. It's okay to fear alligators and be cautious in their environment. Again, we're not swimmers by nature or as humans, right? We're not supposed to be in the water. That's not our environment. Our environment is on land. But when we're in their environment, understanding how they operate out there in a swamp is important. So if a scout was to get in the water, they are usually perfectly safe. It's identifying, an open area within a lake that you don't have a lot of aquatic vegetation, seeing if there are any alligators, curious and looking around. Alligators aren't great at hiding from us. We're in big canoes. We make a lot of noise. If they're curious, they're going to be a couple hundred yards away, kind of looking. But we haven't had any incidences with alligators on our program. This will be our 14th season of running run treks through the
well, I know people are going to want us to ask, so I'll go ahead and ask. What about snakes and people's interaction with snakes and so forth? I'm not afraid of snakes myself. I've been in the woods for so long and almost never encountered any danger. And of course, you don't stick your hands in holes that you don't know what's in there. But and I'm sure that all scouts need to learn about snakes, just like they need to learn about firearms and canoes and alligators and everything else.
So I guess, what are the most common snakes that are there?
Okay, so I'll step back for just a second and say that we have what we call our big four questions, big four concerns. And so this is mama, scout leader back at home worried about her scout, or scout master back somewhere worried about their scouts going on the trek. And they will always ask us one of four things about the swamp. Alligators, usually the number one. Snakes will be up there, mosquitoes, and the summer sun and the heat down here in Louisiana, because our program happens during June and July when scouts are out of school, right? So from an alligator standpoint, I said they're shy and docile. We can recreate safely in their environment. Usually scouts will see somewhere between 75 and 100 alligators during their 5 days on the water. The record, however, though, is over 420. So they saw some gators that trek, mostly probably nests of gators at 25 to 30 or so at a time. When it comes to snakes, we actually rarely see snakes. We actually celebrate the fact if a crew sees a snake because it's so rare. We have big water down here, and there are a lot of predators for snakes, so we don't really see them very often. If we do see snakes, typically the most common are going to be your banded water snake. The two venomous varieties that we have are going to be your water moccasin, cottonmouth, and the copperhead. But I rarely hear any scouts who see those. So that's one of those myths that the TV shows want to tell you they're everywhere. They just aren't. I see more of them in suburbia than I actually see out in the swamps. When it comes to mosquitoes,
I want to hear about mosquitoes.
That's a big question, right? Of course. Yep. Oh, swamps must have bunches of mosquitoes. That's not true. It's not true. Do we have mosquitoes? Absolutely. Is there a single corner in the South that doesn't have mosquitoes? No. Are there places across the Midwest that have mosquitoes? Absolutely. In the Rockies? Absolutely. There's mosquitoes everywhere. The thing is about mosquitoes in the swamp that people don't understand is there just isn't enough prey for mosquitoes to be in the swamp. So when we're on a aquatic environment, we don't have mammals, and that's the number one thing that mosquitoes like to feed on. So if you don't have squirrels, raccoons, possums, if you don't have people, you don't have livestock, there's not a lot of prey for a mosquito, so they don't live there. And when we have big moving water like we do, lakes and bayous and stuff like that, it's just not a habitat where they can actually grow. We will find them more in wooded environments where they have kind of relief from the wind. But again, it's because you have the mammals close by. So mosquitoes in the swamp is kind of a non-thing, really.
Great. Glad to hear it.
We had a scouter from Kentucky years ago, and I remember him very, very clearly, who at his orientation told me, man, I'm really nervous because I get huge welts when I get bit by mosquitoes, and I'm afraid that I'm going to be itching the entire journey, and I'm going to have Benadryl and anti-itch medication and everything, and it's just going to make me have a horrible experience. I got to see him again at his departure as he's walking up. I said, I got to know, let me see the arms, the legs. Did you get, bit up? And he goes, man, I got bit up more just walking from the parking lot over here than I did out in the swamp the entire time. And that's music to your ears when you're trying to sell a swamp to people who think it's got all these things that are negative. Now, the one thing I can tell you that is factual, it is hot in South Louisiana in the summertime. Okay. I can't get around that. But is it hot at Sea Base on Big Munson? Yeah, of course it is. It's hot down there too. Is it hot, at in North Georgia in the summertime? It can be hot there too. The Texas camps, it's hot there, right? It's hot in the summertime. So it's going to be in the upper 80s to low 90s. The one thing that we can say that is fairly consistent is our proximity to the Gulf allows us to have a consistent temperature range. So we're not looking at huge spikes that get up to 110. We're not looking at huge drops down into the 50s. Our temperature range in the summertime is going to be in the low 70s up until about the low 90s during the summertime.
Now, but you talked about, excuse me, Elliot, but you talked about these groups that go out. How big is your generally each crew that goes out? Are you talking 20 scouts and 5 leaders, or are you talking, and how many of these different crews do you go out every summer?
So our crew size is 8 to 11 people. You have to have your minimum of 2 adult leaders, and we start 2 crews daily. So technically you can have 16 to 22 people going onto the water at a time. With each crew, though, we assign a trek guide to join them. So you have a trained swamp-based staff member who knows about the environment, knows the trail, knows how to cook the meals that we have, and is able there to support from a safety and while they're out there experiencing the swamp. So at a time, if we have 2 full crews plus our guides, 24 people go out on the water. We start crews every single day of the summer, from June 6th through July 15th.
Oh, that's great.
Those are all arrival days for us. So we have roughly around 600 or so scouts. It's not what we would consider, knocking the doors down percentage, of numbers of population, but we can fit 24 people on our swamp bus that we call Swamp Force 1, and that's it. So unless I have 2 Swamp Force 1s and Swamp Force 1 and Swamp Force 2, I can't take any more than 24 at a time. So it's 24 going out at a time, and we get a chance to have a really good hands-on experience with them. But it's a great program, and we fill up our treks annually because people want to see what this place is all about.
What about fishing? Do y'all have? Do the boys fit? The boys and girls?
Yeah.
Do they fish and then cook the fish they catch? Do y'all have any of that going on?
It was a former program to be very much fishing centric. We removed that a couple of years back and decided to be a little bit more hands-on when it came to a broader understanding of the swamp itself. And so again, that mission of making sure people have a good understanding of it, we thought was a priority for us. But it doesn't stop scouts from fishing. We encourage them to bring their fishing equipment. If they're of the right age, they don't even need a fishing license down here. Maybe 16, they may have moved it up to even 18 and under, have a free fishing license, the ability to fish for free here. So they can fish along the trail. Our overnight locations have places where they can fish. So there's plenty of opportunities, and they're catching bass and catfish and brim. We call them sockeye, which is a white crappie. So down here, so those are kind of the main fish that they're looking for.
In the efforts for the conservation style attitude, are you or are any of the members of the staff there a member of the Waterkeepers Alliance?
We are not, but I've heard that mentioned before. But yes, that's a good one actually to consider.
Yeah, it's we had a few episodes. Well, I guess it was actually might have been last season. We had a gentleman named Gordon Rogers who works with the Flint River Keepers here at the Flint River, which is the name of our council as well. And they are a division of the Waterkeepers Alliance. Am I understanding that right, Walker?
Yeah.
So the Waterkeepers Alliance is a worldwide conservation effort.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So just thought of that. I was just
something for us to look into for sure.
Yep. Ben, you were talking about, you got to the 3rd day where they have a day off from paddling. And so what happens on like the day they get back and paddle again?
Yep. So day 4 is actually the day off, but day 5 is to me is really the highlight day. So when you make it down to day 5, it starts really early. So you get every minute possible out of that day. The scouts get on the water about 3 a.m. on day 5.
You're kidding.
And any scout who sits there, especially our West Coast scouts, because they are 2 hours, behind us. 3 a.m. is like a 1 a.m. wake up for those guys. And so when they arrive at orientation, that is a daunting thing for them to hear when we're going through the kind of itinerary of the trek. By that day, as you imagine, on day 5, they've had a chance to get out there. They got the excitement, the adrenaline going. They're up at 2:30, ready to roll, and they're having to be pulled back. But the reason that they need to get up that early is because they have a goal in mind that morning. And every day it's got goals, right? That you're trying to achieve. We want to have little successes throughout the day. So that way, no matter what happens, you can have something positive to celebrate. Their goal is to paddle 6 miles that first morning, getting there from 3 a.m. to around 6 a.m. in the morning, getting those 6 miles under so that way they can arrive for a sunrise at a place we call Sandy Cove. and it's kind of an iconic location on our trail. And you cross your fingers and you hope that you get a good, beautiful sunrise, and more often than not you do. And so that's their real goal, is to be able to be there for sunrise. Following that, though, they get a chance to paddle through some of the oldest trees in the entire region. These are cypress trees that have been aged somewhere between 500 and 1,000 years in age. And so they're beautiful old giants, kind of dinosaurs out there that are on the edge of this lake. They continue paddling at the end of that lake, and they go into our portage. Y'all might call it a portage where you're from. Down in South Louisiana, it's a French word. We call it portage. And they portage over our levee and do what we call the swamp stomp. And so no matter what happens along the journey, the swamp stomp is the opportunity to get muddy. And so a lot of the trail, because the water levels are high, you don't have a chance just to kind of play around in the mud like a pig in a pen. And so that's what the swamp stomp is. Our goal is to move our canoes and our gear through the forest, through the mud, and have some fun along the way. And so I've seen our equivalent of the snow angel down here would be the mud angel. And so you have scouts laying out there and leaders laying out there in the mud, making mud angels and putting the war paint on their faces and everything. The idea being that we want them to get back to Lafayette and have a little bit of mud still behind their ears that they forgot to clean off in the bayou when they were getting back into their canoes. So they do that, and then they finish up the trail a little bit later that afternoon. Come back to Lafayette. We mentioned the departure ceremony where we talk about the one word and the experience they have, and that's when we award them their Swamp Base Trek Award patch. And so this is our 2026 Trek Award patch, and of course this is in commemoration of 250 years of the country. And so that's our red, white, and blue version. And then we've had many versions, but the typical one obviously is going to have a black border instead of our red, white, and blue. And it'll say our council initials here in the middle of it. The cool thing, though, about our patch that separates it from any other patch outside of the shape is that we actually have real alligator teeth dangling off of every one of our patches.
What touch indeed.
Yeah. So, we get these alligator teeth in, and we get to play the role of dentist, alligator dentist or crocodile dentist, I guess was the old joke. Got to drill a hole in every single one of these teeth and put them together. So we're hands-on with everything that we do, from the opening experience all the way down to the patch itself.
Are those gators from near around the base at all?
These are Louisiana alligators. So alligator teeth are interesting. Unlike shark teeth that move from the back to the front, an alligator tooth is more conical in shape. And so we talk about it being almost like a nesting doll, where you have a tooth and then there's another, like the tooth that comes off and there's another tooth underneath it. And so when that one comes out, then there's another tooth. So it's they just keep coming out like that. And so an alligator can go through 2,000 plus teeth in its lifetime. And so that's where these alligator teeth come from. So they have lots of farms around the area. I would imagine the teeth fall out, and when they're going to clean out the enclosures where these alligators are, they sweep up all the teeth. And
that's how it happens, right?
Well, I would hope so too. Yeah.
Just out there.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, I have a couple of questions here. I always have lots of questions, and I'm so glad that you came on tonight. This is really impressive because it's the kind of thing that scouting offers. Where else can a kid get the swamp experience like that? I can't think. There's probably some place somewhere, but at any rate, do y'all have a minimum age, or do y'all go ahead and take 11-year-olds and on up?
No,
and
so
that's number one. And then number two, what about girls? Do y'all have girls that are enjoying the participation, or is it mostly boys?
So our age is 13 and older. We've been 13 and older for a while now. So you have to be basically high adventure age in order to participate. We've had female participants since our first year, and one of our first crews that participated, I think it was maybe crew 2 or 3 back in 2013 have participated. We've enjoyed having female scouts out here on the water. At the time, it was venturing crews, and now we have actual full-on Scouts BSA troops participating that are all female, and they do a fantastic job. I don't know any different from them when they're out there on the water. They're all usually more gung-ho, honestly, than even the boys, probably from, being a little bit more mature. So we appreciate having them out there. From a female standpoint, that's never been an issue for us. On our staff, our full-time staff is 50% female. We've got our number one Trek guide of all time, who has the record for miles paddled. I believe she just finished Trek 23 just a couple weeks ago. You do 23 times 61.6, and it's over 1,400 miles of paddling through the Atchafalaya. And so she's on our staff as an assistant program director. Amazing individual, and just out there just showing everybody how it's truly done, really impressing everybody along the way. So I don't think for us, gender's never really been an issue.
Yeah. Tell me something about how it's done. Do the paddlers normally wear gloves so they don't get blisters? And also, do they practice any kind of exercise before they come there so that long paddling in day one doesn't kill them?
Yeah. Paddling gloves is a personal preference, just like I would say canoe seats are a personal preference. Like you have your canoe seat, and they'll have the ones with the backrest. That's a personal thing. And it's also an affordability thing, whether somebody wants to pay the extra money to be able to have a canoe seat or the gloves or whatever the other gear is. It's not a requirement for us. It's a recommended item if they so choose to bring it. And then what was your second question? Sorry.
Well, I was just wondering about gloves and about warming up. I know before people go to Philmont, for example, they'll carry a pack, and you'll see them walking around town and getting ready to carry a 40-pound pack, so they warm up or train for it. So do people train for that paddling?
Absolutely. We definitely recommend that. It's in our leader's guide. Physical fitness and being prepared prior to arriving makes for a more enjoyable experience. When you have scout troops or crews out there on the water that haven't done the necessary training leading up to it, they're going to be a little bit more miserable. They're not going to have the endurance. Their muscles aren't going to be as strong. They're not going to have the core strength. We recommend them doing the general physical fitness routine. Push-ups, sit-ups are really important. Curls, anything with dumbbells is going to be good. Walking is good. Like just having some physical fitness and endurance out there, building up your lung capacity in your heart is always going to be good. The one nice thing that we have as an advantage is that you're sitting down 99% of the time. So you don't have that problem of having to carry everything on your legs. So people can bring a little bit more gear if they so choose. We like to keep everybody light so they're kind of nimble on the water. But those who prepare are going to have a more enjoyable time. You're going to be able to get between each point a little bit faster, so you don't have to take as many breaks if you don't choose. Or when you decide to take breaks, you can take longer ones and really take in the scenery because you can cover those miles quicker than a group that might not have trained prior to getting here.
Okay, I have one more thing, and then we'll wrap up here pretty soon.
How can we stop? Well, how can we stop? I was going to say one more thing for me is we had Dave McLaughlin on, and he's a real expert on wilderness first aid. And I'm sure that y'all have a whole program of that, or a backup of first aid and emergencies, and you have motorboats that can run out and get people if they get injured or real sick or something. But go ahead, Elliot.
I want to know about that, actually.
There we go.
Yeah.
Great minds think alike.
So all of our staff are wilderness first aid trained, lifeguard trained. So we make sure that we have everything that exceeds what the standard might be. When it comes from a participant end of things, they have to have spread amongst their group. Your weather hazards, your safety afloat, paddlecraft safety. We require just standard first aid with the leaders there because our guide has the wilderness first aid. Sometimes accidents do happen. It's rare for us. The number one thing, though, that we have is issue, and this really comes up, again, to proper planning before arriving. Dehydration becomes the number one thing for us because they're out on the water and they're forgetting to drink or stay hydrated. And so when they travel from long distances, and again, we get scouts from all over the country. Actually, our number 2 state attended now is California. So they're coming from California just as much as anywhere else, if not more. Texas is number 1 and probably will forever be. But California's jumped up to be number 2. They've traveled a long ways to get here. And if you're not hydrated, which you don't do when you're on an airplane, because you don't want to have to use the restroom on the plane, you're forgetting about that. And they get here dehydrated to begin with. And so that becomes an issue that sees itself early on. So that's usually our number 1 thing. Sunburns become an issue, but this is all stuff that people can handle if they're just taking care of themselves and looking out for each other. You get the other little incidents that happen, homesick and things like that. Medication that gets wet and it's important for them to get off and get a new prescription, those kind of things. But generally it's pretty normal stuff. And we respond to it with motorboats and everything else that we have at our disposal.
That sounds, what a great operation that is. I was, for some reason, I was picturing people going out on Sunday and coming back on Saturday or something. Not a two groups a day going out. That's clever. That's really clever. I think.
So they just stagger down the trail. Yep. You know, we've got our handy dandy little brochure right here. Find this online, swampbasebsa.org. But this actually is great because it's got the whole trail listed through here. So every day along the way tells you some of the highlights of the experience as well. So if you're looking for some good reading material, we got our brochures that we send out all the time.
That sounds great. Is the base owned by Scouting America, or is it owned by your council? Not that it matters.
We are considered a council organization. So Yep. And you asked that question probably about 45 minutes ago. We do have 63 acres, I mentioned. We are starting construction out there. Our first building is actually almost complete. We just put up a 4,000 square foot pavilion, which allows us to do the stuff like mentioned for more locals here in the area. So we can get big scout groups to come out there and have events. We can go out there and have field trips come out there and have some multi-purpose facility that is all shaded. And then future facilities, which we're starting our design process on right now, will include our actual headquarters for our operation. So you're talking about administrative offices. That's the boring part. You're talking about a large outfitting store, so we can outfit scouts as well as have all the good souvenirs and everything that they're desiring. But the thing that we really are excited about with our future facility is that we're going to have an exhibit hall that really talks about the holistic approach to educating people about the Atchafalaya. So the watershed, we're talking about the flora and the fauna, the culture and the people of this area, because we are a different breed down here in South Louisiana. And then at the end of it, when they go through this exhibit hall, we'll actually have, like at an aquarium, a live alligator display. That is something we're really excited about because, again, breaking those myths and misconceptions about this place is at the forefront of what we do. So we'll have the alligators there firsthand for people to be able to interact with and have a chance to see up close. So that way we can use that draw of the alligators to be able to teach them more about scouting here in Acadiana and across the country, as well as all the other things that are associated with the Atchafalaya.
Do y'all have any sort of Cajun thing, like Cajun music or a Cajun stop, or you have Cajun food there? You have the shrimp and red beans and rice.
And we do gumbo, jambalaya, and crawfish etouffee as well. So those are the highlight list. We go through all the delicacies of Louisiana's best foods. Basically, anything you can put on rice, we're going to feed you. But we actually, when they're at Camp Atchafalaya on day 4, and they have that opportunity to take a break and relax, kind of get those muscles back, one of the programs that we do is called a Zydeco Social. So about Cracker Barrels. Yeah. Our Zydeco Social is about eating boudin. I don't know if you guys know what boudin is, but basically it's a pig casing, an intestine typically, and they stuff it with rice and other types of meats and seasoning. It's delicious, I promise you. And then so they try some boudin instead of having crackers. We got to do it South Louisiana down here. And then we play Zydeco, Cajun and Zydeco music, and we teach all of our scouts how to line dance to Cajun and Zydeco music. And so this was one of those programs that, I'll be honest, I didn't think was going to be successful at all. I'm not a dancer. I can't see, all these 14, 15-year-olds, especially the boys, sitting there saying, I'm comfortable enough to go out there on a dance floor and, cut a rug, learning these different moves to this music. But the music is so strong and it's got such a driving beat. And then when you've got your trek guides out there and your program staff out there acting crazy and having a good time, it's infectious, and they're all out there too. So we challenge them along the trail from, the paddling to the food that we offer, and even how to learn how to dance like we do down here. So there's challenges all along the way, new experiences to be had.
That's wonderful. Wonderful.
Ben, I got to say, you've painted a beautiful picture for us, but I want to mention one more thing is that much like painting pictures, you take fabulous pictures. So when I put the link to the BSA Swamp Base site, I would also like your permission to link your photography site, because Walker, you've got to go check out Ben's photography. It's fantastic.
I'd be glad to.
With light, I'm telling you.
Well, I appreciate that. it's a blessing to be able to have your hobby, something you really enjoy doing, also provide a benefit to what your career is. And I think, again, going back to kind of our whole mission about changing perceptions of this place, we do so with the scouts out there on the water, and that's 5 days of immersion. But when it comes to from a photography standpoint, as an artist, I'm also trying to do that same thing. And so I want people to see what swamps truly are. I want them to see those beautiful colors, and I want them to break all those myths and all the negativity that people think about those places. And so that's just another way for me to add an additional positive spin to this place, and hopefully scouters across the country get a chance to see those photos and see really what swamps are all about, and not allow outside opinions of people who've never experienced these places kind of drive what their opinion is. For us, it's, you can't have an opinion of value until you actually try something. And so anybody who arrives and thinks about this place in a negative way and they've never been here, it's really unfair to swamps, and it's unfair to the people of South Louisiana to have that opinion until you go out there and paddle it. And like Walker said earlier when he was discussing Atchafalaya Houseboat, the book with that was written back in the 70s, until you have an understanding and get a chance to see that place, you don't know. And so that's what we have to overcome as a program is getting people to take a moment and think about this place for just a second, say, maybe this is something I want to try. And when they do, they're going to want to come back again, because they are going to fall in love with the program, the hospitality that we offer. I think we have food that's second to none when it comes to scouting. You aren't going to find spaghetti and macaroni and cheese, that's for sure. You will find trail food, so I gotta be honest, but our dinners are phenomenal, and we really love what we do. I hope you guys kind of got that from me during this
Oh, we did.
Said it was a tough sell. This is, I mean, I'm so
Tough
excited.
sell.
That was you did it easily, because I'm ready to sign up right now. We've got people in the comment section right now saying that I look like I'm going to sign up, and they're all playing. It looks like our program specialist and some of our summer camp staffers here at the Flint River are ready to plan a staff team building experience down there at Swamp Base, and I'm thinking that sounds like a really good idea. So everybody, please visit the BSA Swamp Base website. It'll be linked down below, but also please go to benpiercephotography.com and look at the lightscapes photography. I'm serious, Ben. I tried a little photography thing myself for a little while, doing some concert photography, and it was fun and great, but the artwork that is your lightscape photography it's absolutely beautiful. It's
Thank
really
you. Thank you.
It looks like everything's a book cover and an album cover, and everything should be on the wall.
Sounds great, Ben. We always go over a little bit on these, but we can't help it. We could go on for another hour, and that's what we always say.
Oh,
There's goodbye to the alligator too.
What's his name? What's that alligator?
I don't know if this one's got a name yet. This might be T-Boy, which we name a lot of our alligators from a book called The Cajun Night Before Christmas. And so this would be what Papa Noel would use to pull his Piro through the swamp on Christmas Eve. So this is T-Boy right here then.
T-Boy, I like it.
All right.
Hopefully I'll come meet T-Boy in person sometime soon.
Yeah.
I want to say thank you for being on our show, Ben. I'd look forward to maybe even having you on again to talk more about after the summer's over, and after you get all these challenges over with, because there's plenty more to be had. It's going to be a good summer. I can feel it.
We're excited. Thank you so much for having me.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks for coming back to Agents to Scouting. We'll see you next Thursday.
Yeah. An alligator.